as people are joining, before I go ahead and go through the bio and get started, just wanted to let you all know that our new VP of Sales, April, if those of you haven't met her, April Nicholson, she comes from Experian with Experian Automotive, and John, April has spoken very, very highly of John, and we're very, very excited to have him on the show today. Got a great topic lined up, and I think we can go ahead and get this kicked off. So to introduce him, John Howard is Director of Product Management for Experian Automotive. In this role, he and his team conduct industry and automotive data consulting, as well as oversee customer success programs around the business's market intelligence platform, Velocity, which serves as a reporting tool for new and used vehicle registration statistics, vehicles in operation, and vehicle owner loyalty data. Additionally, John performs a number of industry analyses designed to help clients improve profitability and uncover growth opportunities by providing a better understanding of the automotive landscape. The majority of John's career has been served within the automotive industry. Prior to joining Experian in February of 2014, John spent 17 years in a variety of product leadership roles at ADP Dealer Services, now known as SDK. His positions with ADP allowed him to become familiar with the data and analytics needs of both the retail and manufacturing sides of the automotive industry. John, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. This is great. And just a slight correction, it's CDK Global, not SDK, CDK.
What did I say?
Yes.
Oh, well, that was a mental typo. Obviously, we know it's CDK. So very, very excited to dive into this. Today, we're going to be talking about customer loyalty and specifically brand loyalty, customer loyalty in a post-pandemic world. Before we dive into that, something that we kind of need to go over, because I know a lot of the people joining will think this. John, you're with Experian Automotive. Of course, everyone knows that Experian is a credit bureau. Can you take a couple minutes and tell us a little more about Experian Automotive?
Sure. Actually, I have a couple quick slides that'll kind of help me provide a little background of Experian Automotive and who we are in the Experian landscape. And just do a quick share here.
Perfect.
There we go. All right. Can you see the slide on the screen?
You got it.
Okay, fantastic. So Experian Automotive was formed in 1998. So again, like I said, most of the nation knows Experian as one of the three credit bureaus, but automotive is actually servicing the auto industry with vehicle statistics, consumer information, and then obviously ties into the credit base. All of those are still under one roof, under the Experian rooftop. We serve lenders, dealers, manufacturers, tier one platform and agencies, and tier two agencies, and then even the aftermarkets like the Pep Boys and the AutoZone are top customers of ours. So billions of data insights, and I'll just kind of take us to the next slide really quick. So this should be fast. There we go. So under those data assets, again, we're one of two with North American Vehicle Database, key insights into vehicle ownership using vehicle registrations, and then other data enhancements. Obviously, that's where I'll go into a little bit more of how loyalty is compiled. The File One credit base, again, that's the credit bureau side of our business. We have National Fraud Database, Consumer View. We're one of three national marketing databases. And then just lastly on this slide is just online activity database. So again, just kind of billions of data assets all under one roof. And then bringing that all together, so we combine first-party data with third-party data for customized solutions. We have a lot of customers who take advantage of our hygiene, so enhanced cleansing, processing, compiling, and even modeling. And then obviously all that data comes into auto-specific data offerings and products. I'll come back to this on share here.
So I think it's clear that that while a lot of people think of Experian as primarily a credit bureau, there's a lot that you guys do in automotive and data to work with the dealers and the manufacturers. So definitely have a lot of experience here.
Experian Automotive is dedicated to the auto industry, all different facets of it. Like I said on that prior screen, was lenders to dealers to the manufacturers themselves, and then even to, like I said, the aftermarket space.
Mm-hmm. So let's dive into it. Today, we're going to be talking about loyalty. You're going to be giving us some insights here. And just to start with, how are you defining loyalty?
So loyalty is really a customer repurchase assessment. So again, for someone to be loyal or not loyal, you have to have owned something, right? You have to have bought from a specific dealer. So we can look at measurement of loyalty at a brand perspective. We can look at it from a model perspective, and then we could also look at it even more granular down to a dealer level. It is based on registrations, and then we enhance that data with data we receive from the manufacturers. So again, that's kind of how we get down to a dealer level. Um, we model, or excuse me, we compile two different types of loyalty. One of those is loyalty at the household level, and then the other is loyalty at a disposal level, or what we consider a vehicle repurchase, or excuse me, vehicle replacement. So again, two types of ways to look at loyalty, where you can see a household come back to market regardless of whether they dispose of a vehicle or not. And the other side of that is looking at vehicle replacement.
Mm-hmm. And
So, and all
so,
that is based on registrations, and then through a set of business rules. When we see a purchase from registration data, when we see a purchase take place, we're looking into that owner's garage to see what did they have at the time of that purchase. And then again, the other model is what did they dispose of at the time of that purchase or within a window of time.
mm-hmm. And that's all, of course, related to sales and, purchasing
Yeah.
new vehicles, replacing vehicles. When you define loyalty and look at it, is there anything relating to servicing that you're looking at?
So servicing is outside of registration data, right? There is a place for service data to kind of, we also calculate or compile vehicles in operation, or car park as it's sometimes known. That integrates really well with service data to see what the effectiveness. So customers in a specific territory, for any brand, you can see how many of those customers come in based on car park, how many of those are servicing at your dealership. So
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Okay, so the big topic here, the pandemic. Now it's
Yeah.
2023. So, this is kind of the big thing that did loyalty shift during the pandemic is kind of the theme of today. But
Sure.
what are your thoughts there?
So pandemic was a strange time. Obviously, loyalty shifted quite a bit. We saw a lot of our OEM partners, kind of discussing about what was going to bring customers back. The challenge shortly after the pandemic, sure, there was not very many customers returning to market to buy a vehicle during the pandemic. People were really driving. The challenge is the year after, or shortly at the end of towards the pandemic, 2021 saw the worst brand loyalty rates across the nation. I mean, that I've ever seen. If I go back 10, 15 years, I think it was July, August, and September of 2021. And again, in the heart of the supply chain issues, very low customers returning to market. A lot of people keeping their leased or buying their leased vehicles because there was no inventory. So that obviously caused a drop in dealer loyalty. In the same token, some of my OEM customers, we had to talk a lot about, dealers that didn't have inventory, and that customer needed to acquire something. They were going to where the car was, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have the car. I'm going to drive 25 miles and get the car that I want. So that did see, that was really those 3 months right in the middle of 2021 when the supply chain issues were such a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I saw the majority of both dealer and brand loyalty drop.
And I mean, that makes sense, as you said, and we all heard it from friends too, who weren't in the industry. I need a new car. Yep, they got one.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that's pretty much what it took to make a sale in a lot of these cases.
And it was also the ideal time for somebody not to be loyal to a specific brand. If I've been a Toyota owner for so long, but I can't find the Toyota I want, but yet the Nissan dealer has something, similar to it, I might, jump ship and go to Nissan.
Mm-hmm. Is there any, it's the worst you've seen it in the last 10 to 15 years, around late summer of 21? Is there any statistic or anything you have to back that up?
Sure. Yeah, actually, I was just looking at that earlier today. So like I said, it was probably the lowest industry loyalty that we saw. So they were roughly around 58%. Now in 2023, we're into the low 60s, so 62, 63% through 2023. But that was the biggest drop across the last 10 years that I looked at that we've seen, even though it was just a couple percentage points. Though that matters, right?
Hmm.
When you're looking at
And
industry loyalty.
and what were you seeing before the pandemic?
Uh, High 60s, mid 60s to high 60s. It's usually pretty steady. But again, once 2020 hit, it just kind of went all over the place. And again, it's all based on how many customers come back to the market to buy. That's sort of your denominator. And then, what they decide to do in their repurchase assessment. And again, inventory was a big concern after
Hmm.
the pandemic.
And so that's through the pandemic. Now, you kind of touched on it, but now let's kind of move into post-pandemic. What's going on here?
So, like I said, now we're kind of back in here's 2023, and even mid to late 2022, we saw the numbers kind of go back to a stable rate of loyalty, right? Where we weren't seeing the dips or the ebbs and flows so much. But I'd say, anywhere, and again, based on brand loyalty, we're talking low to mid 60s is kind of the normal. Again, it kind of look across, let's leave, 2008 and 2009 out of it, right? Because those were some uncertain times as well. But now we're starting to deal with interest rates, and I think you're going to get into this, right? What
Hmm.
finances look like today, or at least the lending industry, and that's kind of causing a little bit. I wouldn't say it's having such an impact on loyalty, but it certainly is. We're showing lower numbers of customers returning to market,
Hmm.
right?
I absolutely makes sense. Harsher economic conditions.
Yep.
We keep hearing inflation, interest rate, I mean, all of
Right.
that. And one of the things that we've been hearing a lot in the last several months is that a lot of the dealers are feeling that inventory is rising, but interest rates are rising. So as you said, customers aren't looking to buy. How is that all coming into play with loyalty in particular?
Yeah, it kind of goes to, again, the same thing. If you don't have those customers, I have a couple OEMs that I work with that are struggling trying to help dealers get rid of inventory. I mean, they're overstocked. It's the whole opposite problem that we had a year and a half ago, where dealers had no inventory. Now we've got too much.
Hmm.
And the challenge is we're just starting to see incentives start to change, especially at the captive level. Um, but sometimes that's not enough, right? So it's how do you get that customer back into the store when there's no significant financial incentive to get them in.
Hmm.
Right?
So you work with a lot of various OEMs, tons of dealers. What do you see different OEMs, different dealers of that same brand? I mean, how does loyalty shake up and customers returning to market, people staying at the same dealer, same brand? What are you seeing across the
Yeah.
different brands?
Well, the one place where we've always seen, I guess, an advantage to getting a customer back into the store is leasing, right? Because typically leasing has always said you're end of term, you're going to do something, you're going to make some sort of decision, and the majority of times, it wasn't financially, uh, it wasn't an advantage to buy the lease out, right? Because typically you're ready for, after let's say a 36-month term, you're ready to turn that car, get into something new. Um, that's always traditionally been the area where dealers can actually take advantage of that situation, whether it's their customer or not, knowing when a customer is going to be off of lease, um, knowing when a customer is going to be in equity position. And that's all data that we have available in our data sets that, one of those products is our Experian marketing engine has that, compliant modeling to target those customers, but especially in that off lease situation, because they're going to make a determination of some sort, right? Either they're going to turn the car in, get something new. Pandemic saw a lot of people give up vehicles, right? I'll just turn the car in. I don't need a different one, right? Go down to one car in the household. But now we're kind of getting back to normal, where people are driving again. They're commuting. So that one car household, is likely going to turn to two, possibly three, depending on children and whatnot. But leasing has always traditionally been that place where if you capture the person at the right time, you're in front of them before that buying process or that decision process starts. That's for sure where we've seen, and it'll continue. Even though leasing's not as much, it's not as interesting right now, especially with the way interest rates are. It's just not as advantageous as it has been in the past.
Mm-hmm. And can you, let's back up here. And obviously we have dealers on, we have vendors on. Let's just pretend that someone doesn't really know what you're talking about when you say, hey, they should take advantage of leases, going after, get in front of those customers. What is this strategy?
So timing is everything. And I know OEMs, I'm a lessee myself. I too was one of those folks that went and bought my car because again, there was a shortage of inventory, prices were very high. So I bought out my low mileage lease. The one thing about, now that the table's starting to turn a little bit, or the tides are turning, I should say, getting in front of that customer again before, I think of myself, I start thinking about my next car a year ahead when I know my lease is going to, come to term. And there are people like that, but I know the OEMs have a process, or the captives have a process to try to capture that customer before they get into the buying cycle or that decision-making cycle as they're starting to research. But timing is key, making sure to be in front of that customer front and center, especially at the dealer level, to ensure that that customer gets back into your store, at least become part of the consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, making sure that you're able to target those customers and give them the right communication at the right time.
Mm-hmm. And so you recommend that across every brand, every manufacturer. You recommend every dealer try to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, because you can see it. You can see it in the loyalty numbers that leasing is traditionally the place to capture more loyalty. Again, because you're at a decision point where you have to do something.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I want to ask you about any other strategies that can be implemented, as well as what kind of improvements in their loyalty figures that people will see if they implement some of these strategies and go after those leases, and any other tips and strategies you have. Before we get to that, though, I have to bring in Liza from the Volie team, who has something to share with everyone about something new going on with Volie. So let's go ahead, take a couple minutes here, get her in here, and then we'll get right back at it. As she's coming in here, everyone, if there's any extra questions you have, any follow-ups that you want for John, feel free to type them in the Q&A here. We'll be getting to any of your questions at the end. You can email them to me, jake@volie.com, or you can send them into the chat here as well. And it looks like Liza's here. Liza, floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to be sharing my screen again. I wanted to just take a couple of minutes to talk about, to pull this report back up. I think we've looked at it in the past, but to leverage it to look at something that maybe we haven't talked about before. In Volie, right, a lot of times we're talking about your communications as either inbound communications or outbound generated communications. So inbound being, the customer is seeking you out. They found your phone number online. Maybe they have a question. They want to set an appointment, whatever it is, they're coming to you, versus your outbound communications or campaigns. You are seeking out the customer. You've identified that you want to reach them for whatever reason. Maybe, you've identified that they need an appointment. So you're taking that active outreach. So I have this report. This is the communication disposition report pulled up in an account, and I'm looking at a month's worth of data, and I have it pulled up twice here. Once I'm filtering specifically for those inbound customer initiated communications. And on the other tab, I have the outbound. I filtered for everything but inbound. So I'm looking at the outbound, dealer driven communications. I wanted to pull this up and talk about how you can use this report to kind of get some insight on those conversations that don't result in the desired behavior. So if desired behavior is setting an appointment, I want to look at the outcomes that are not an appointment. And I think this is valuable because you can take some of those dispositions in our case, right? Some of those outcomes, and maybe you're taking it back. It's information that you can use in other places in the dealership outside of the BDC. So I'll talk specifically, I guess, about what I mean here. So on the inbound side, a couple of things. I expect appointments to be a really large percentage of my outcomes on an inbound call. Most of the time when people are calling in, I hope that it's because they're calling for an appointment. But a couple of other outcomes that I might look for on the inbound side are status checks. Do I have a large percentage of customers who are calling in trying to get the status of their vehicle? If that's the case, maybe I take that information back to my advisors, and maybe I need to give them a more efficient way of keeping customers updated, so that all of those customers don't feel like they need to, reach out on their own. So status checks might be something that I look for on the inbound side. Transfers is another one. So is my BDC fielding a lot of calls that they can't manage, and so they're having to put the customer on hold and loop in a third party? It's another thing to watch for. On the inbound side, you might try and get more feedback on those transfers. Are we a lot of times waiting for specific employees? Is there any improvement that we can make there so that the customer isn't sitting waiting for a lot of times, right? It's someone outside of the BDC. Third thing I'd look for that I wrote down on the inbound side are pricing questions. Does this indicate that maybe we don't have enough information on our website? Or if a customer is trying to schedule on their own, it's not clear enough and they're getting stuck. So to dig a little bit deeper into those customers who are calling in just with questions, whether it's pricing questions or scheduling questions, etc. On the outbound side, really quickly, same thing here. We want to see what percentage of our outbound efforts are resulting in appointments. And hopefully that will steer what we want to prioritize. You want to prioritize the outbound efforts that result in more appointments. But outside of that, I think good things to look for here are serviced elsewhere. And you might call it something else in your account, but let's identify those customers who are going somewhere else to get their service done. And maybe we pull those communications specifically and we try to find out why. Why are they servicing somewhere else? You might also have separate dispositions for customers who no longer own their vehicle or no longer live in the area. We can take that feedback and definitely utilize it in the BDC to kind of smarten up our outbound efforts, but there might be other people in the dealership who can benefit from that information as well. If you have like a marketing team, they probably want to know if customers don't own a particular vehicle anymore, or if they're no longer in your area. So I wanted to bring this up today just to kind of plant that seed. There's definitely some learnings. There's information that you collect in the BDC that can be leveraged in other places in the store. So this report is a good place to start. It might kind of give you some ideas about what you want to dig further into. Any questions, always let us know. But hopefully this gets some people thinking over the weekend, and then we can look into some more of these questions next week. Jake, you're muted.
In the history of doing these, I have never once done that. So there is a first time for everything. Thanks, Liza. As always, if there's any other questions for Liza or anyone else on the Volie team, feel free to go ahead and ask your customer success rep, or you can email me or Liza or anyone else on the team, and we'll be happy to get to those. So, John, hear me again?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay. So before the break there, we were talking about some strategies that dealers can implement in order to try to improve loyalty. And you were talking about lease retention. Are there any other strategies that you think is worth a dealer looking at? So
I think Liza just kind of brought up a very good thing. So retention and service is obviously tied very much to sales, because again, when you're working with a service customer and you have a good reputation with that customer, they have a good reputation with the dealer, it's odds are that dealer will come under consideration for their next repurchase, right?
Mhm.
So I think whatever you can do to maintain the great relationship with that customer as a service customer, the better it's going to be when it comes time for them to return to market for whether it's their replacement vehicle or another vehicle for the household. So service matters, I guess, is kind of where I was going with that.
The service absolutely matters, and that's one of the things where, just with our own business with Volie, that's why, I mean, we're big fans of service, and we're big proponents of, hey, you should have a service outreach program, you should have a service BDC, because get in front of these customers regularly, maintaining that relationship is is very, very important, and can lead to future sales too. Keep them in your funnel,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Anything else you want to touch on there in terms of strategies that you see work?
No, I think that's about all I have. I did want to share before we end, I had kind of gone to it in that presentation, just where we can where folks can get more information on Experian.
Well, hold on. Before we get to there, and
Okay.
don't worry, we will get to that. Got to make sure to ask you. So dealers who go ahead and implement a lease retention strategy, having a good, strong service retention strategy, and OEMs who push this stuff, what improvements do they see in terms of their customer loyalty, in terms of how they're doing?
Sure. I think, well, both are impacted, but it's the brand loyalty itself, keeping someone in the brand, but then also dealer loyalty sees an uptick when all those strategies work together. Again, capturing customers at the right time before any kind of decision making happens. Being able to communicate with them, and it doesn't even have to be incentivized, right? It's just having customer reach at the right time in that process prior to them making that you want to be considered, right? Regardless of what brand they're going to go to next or what dealer they're going to choose.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked a lot about the data that Experian Automotive is generating for the brands and the individual dealers, and you're able to track the households, being able to see when these customers return to market. What other type of data is the dealers able to get out of Experian Automotive?
So one of them I kind of mentioned, our Experian marketing engine is kind of a pretty common product in dealerships today. That actually allows, kind of going back to when I was talking about getting in front of the customer at the right time, it allows dealers to look, and even lenders, but to look at what customers are going to be coming out of the lease, what customers are going to be in an equity position, because again, that kind of helps the buying process if you actually have equity in your vehicle. There's lots of different factors that can kind of filter down, and by make, by model, you can target a specific audience to create a communication plan, create a marketing plan. So again, that reach is very important.
And so then are they able to target customers who aren't in their database?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So now we're going to go ahead here. We've had quite a few questions come in for you. Feel free to get any other questions. I want to have an open discussion here with John. Excuse me. And we'll get to those questions again. You can put anything in the chat, though I've gotten a few to jake@volie.com, and you can feel free to send those over to me as well. Before we get to those, and I'll organize them, John, how can everyone listening get in touch with you? And I know you had some resources to share.
Sure. Let me throw those up while you're doing that. Yep. And so on Experian.com or even ExperianAutomotive.com, there's actually, if you kind of scroll down to sort of the middle of the page, you'll find that we have 3 huge resources for their quarterly trends. One of those is our State of the Automotive Finance Market Report. Again, recorded webinar, lots of insights there on what's going on in the financial piece of the industry. We have an Automotive Market Trends Report that's also done quarterly, that looks at everything from vehicles in operation to registrations, a little bit of loyalty. And then lastly, our Automotive Consumer Trends Report, which actually dives into consumer insights. So 3 really popular quarterly reports that are available for free all you have to do is subscribe.
Awesome. And we'll go ahead and throw that into the YouTube description as well when we post this next week, as well as your contact info, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Anything else
And
there?
as you know, on my contact, if you've tried to search for me on LinkedIn, I'm not there right now. I was actually one of those involved in a hack, so my profile is taken down at the moment. But I should have it repaired within the next couple of weeks. I just have to go in and see what kind of damage was done.
Yeah, two-factor is very important as we're finding out, and one of the things a couple of Volie sessions ago we talked about how we're rolling out two-factor for all of our users, to have that option for their agents and such, and it's it can help protect your accounts and protect your data for sure. So, okay, question number one, someone asks, so I guess these first two kind of go together, but do you expect loyalty? So when you look at your statistics there for pre, during, and post-pandemic, how does that translate? Do you expect loyalty to be the same across different brands?
This is a tough question. Every brand is different. And when I talk about industry loyalty as a whole, I'm talking the average of every brand together, whether it's luxury, non-luxury. Loyalty leadership, and I'm sure dealers probably know this, Tesla has been at the lead even throughout the pandemic. Tesla was probably one of the highest loyalty rates. That's starting to shift a little bit as the pie is starting to get a little bit bigger of EVs being available. Tesla had a lot more inventory than a lot of brick and mortar stores did, coming in and out of the pandemic, even through the supply chain issues. So they tended to get a lot of return customers.
Mm-hmm.
But I suspect that, so even though Tesla, I think, is somewhere running around 83% this year, but again, as that pie of electric vehicles starts to grow, I see Tesla's losing some share. So obviously that might drop their loyalty rates just as well.
Mm-hmm. So you do see, just to answer the question, you do expect loyalty to be a little different across various different brands then?
Yes, I'm already seeing, yes. We've seen that, forever, again, through premium brands, non-premium. But I suspect that loyalty is going to shift in both segments across all the brands, especially now that inventory is a little bit back to being more normal. Inventory
is certainly rising a bit, and that's something dealers are dealing with, and that's part of the reasons why this is a good topic, is because helping dealers to keep their loyalty up, reach their existing customer base, can help them move some of that inventory that is starting to rise. So that kind of leads into, something you were getting at there, kind of leads into the next question. But what is that difference you see? And take Tesla out of it then, because we kind of already covered them. But what difference do you see with the luxury versus the non-luxury brands? Do you expect loyalty to be higher or lower with luxury?
A lot of it's still kind of scrutinized right now because it's that evolution into electric. And I think that's where all the premium, so the BMWs, the Mercedes-Benz, they're starting to focus on that whole EV evolution. And I think the challenge there is going to be that customer embracement. I mean, there's still a lot of anxiety around electric vehicles in the industry. So it's still a lot of education. There's still a lot that needs to happen with infrastructure. And again, especially as these, let's say luxury minus Tesla are, trying to grow their that EV evolution, model by model.
Mm-hmm. But on the whole, then, let's take Lexus versus Toyota. Would you expect Lexus or Toyota to have? I mean, what do you typically see?
Toyota's always at the top. And obviously they have a very large model lineup. But Toyota customers tend to stay in the brand. I think they're probably number 2 or 3 across all brands. Subaru's right up there as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Definitely makes sense. How should I, as a dealer, track whether customers have defected or if they just haven't come back to market, as you say?
That's where the loyalty comes in. Now it's very difficult because in order to be compliant, all the data that we use based on registrations is de-identified. So we can certainly see customers come back to market and in an aggregate see how many defected. Getting in front, so before that customer makes a decision, I guess that's where the reach out is important. The follow-up is important. If they didn't come back to the store or they didn't come back to the brand, where did they go? That's important, whether that's just a follow-up, whether it's survey data, but it's important to find, that particular customer, where did they go?
Mm-hmm. So once then a follow-up question, once then that they haven't returned to your store, or they may have just gone to a different Toyota store, or
Sure.
they could have gone to a different brand altogether. How do you, or how should you as a dealer follow up with those customers?
I think that's going to be, kind of a BDC element, because I think that's really the only way to find out for sure what their decision was, where they went, why'd they make that decision. Was it a brand decision only, or was there a choice of dealers, that it made sense? They had the car, you didn't.
Mm-hmm. And then is there any type of outreach that you see works the best? Phone, email, SMS, in terms of getting customers back into the store?
I'd say, all the above. But I would, email, SMS, even social, is kind of way to get them back to the brand, or get them back to the store, I should say.
Yeah, we typically see, because we track this in Volie, that customers respond to text to 5 to 1, compared to calls.
Yeah.
So it is pretty powerful.
Sure.
Okay, so we have another question here that's come in here, which is relating to some sort of compliance, and I'm sure the question was based in D&C, regulation and such, but are you allowed to contact people who aren't in your database, haven't given consent, if you buy the Experian marketing data?
So the Experian marketing data is actually modeled. So it's modeled in a compliant way, to where if I want to reach Jake Davis, I will reach Jake Davis. Now, I'm going to also reach your lookalikes, right? So it's not targeting you, because again, that's from a DMV perspective, not allowed. But in a very compliant, modeled way, I will find you in that audience that I'm targeting, if that's my objective.
Mm-hmm. But there's no there's no worry that they're going to be calling a customer who isn't allowed to be called, for example.
No.
Okay.
And that can be pushed out. Those audiences can be pushed out to social, an email campaign. And again, if it's a direct customer from your DMS, that's a whole different story, right? So if that customer's already in your database, then typically, you have the right to approach. But from an audience perspective, again, it's not going to, it's compliant, because it's modeled, but it's in a targeted way to make sure you're finding the customer that you're actually looking for, whether they're in your database or not.
That makes sense. And we have one more question that has come in here, and I think it's a great question, and kind of going back to pre, during, and post-pandemic. This is totally conjecture, of course, on your part, but what does the future look like for customer loyalty?
That's a good question. With the way, and again, let's take loyalty aside, just the inventory, or excuse me, the whole industry itself is just in such a strange period right now, because of interest rates, because of inflation. Customers are making very different decisions than they were pre-pandemic. Now again, you can see it in the numbers, just market share numbers, the way they're kind of still fluctuating a little bit. But I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure we know yet. I mean, I suspect that, again, because now we're also in that evolution to electric vehicles or electrification, that's kind of changing the path of some folks as well. And also, again, it's as more models come online from different brands, it's kind of a new industry, right? It's evolving fast, and I think a lot of customers are going to make different decisions. Whether they're loyal to Ford and they've only had Fords in their household or not, there's going to be a whole the landscape is changing. So I'm not sure I know the answer to that just yet.
Yeah, and you know, I'd rather you say I don't know and I'll find out than to, you know, try to, you know, make up an answer. The interesting thing will be to see you know, what the dealers can do to try to retarget those customers, to try to keep them going. And I think the couple things that we spoke about here, you know, lease retention, service retention, having an ongoing relationship with those customers, I think those are a lot of really good points.
And you know, I know it's a little bit tough in the market to negotiate, but I know lenders are looking at this, or captives especially are looking at the financial incentives, just because they were kind of lean for such a long time. Now, what can they do? You know, especially in the EV space, you see that a lot just because of the federal incentives. But I think, you know, price matters, you know, especially at this point in time.
Price matters, interest rates matter, and you know, maybe in if interest rates go back down to where they were you know, pre-pandemic levels and such, inflation kind of calms down, would you expect to see, again conjecture to the point that you can, but would you expect to see pre-pandemic levels of loyalty?
Yes, no doubt. And I think, you know, we see, because right now we're seeing a lot on the financial side, and if anybody signs up for the state of the automotive finance market report that I talked about, we talk a lot, or Melinda talks a lot about, in that we're seeing a lot more cash transactions, or at least a lot more cash going down on the deal, just to bring the payment down to sort of what's normal in somebody's head. Just with the way, you know, whether it's a 4 or 5, 6% rate, you know, more cash is about the only way you can bring that payment down, or extending terms. That's the other thing we're seeing a lot on the finance side, is extending terms, just to, again, keep somebody in their budget.
Keep somebody in their monthly budget. So of course, if interest rates come down, people will be more likely to want to enter the market again.
Sure.
John, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Any other closing thoughts here before we wrap it up?
No, this was fantastic. I thank you for the opportunity. This was great.
Awesome. So not LinkedIn, but how else can folks get in touch with you if they have any other questions or want to talk about Experian Automotive?
Sure. You can actually reach out. You can find Experian Automotive on LinkedIn, but I'm happy to take any kind of questions. I don't have it on a slide, but my email address is, and get this right, john.rhoward at Experian.com. But yeah, happy to take any emails.
Awesome. We will go ahead and throw that in the description as well, so people can be sure that they have that right. John.rhoward instead of john.howard. So thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for everyone joining us today. Let us know, let your Volie rep know if there's anything in particular you would like to hear, and I hope that you all have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks, Jake.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.